in my own head, I didn't know what, like, I had no assumptions for the word God, but I asked it, "Are you God?" as it left. I wasn't like thinking Christian, whatever, whatever. I was just asking, "Is that what you are?" I was looking in the mirror at this point in the bathroom and I had my glasses on. And then I started to realize that space around my peripherals, like where I was seeing with my glasses versus here, like this area around here was clearer. And I was like, so I like very trembly hands like took off my glasses and looked in the mirror. I was like, I can't see. So I threw out my glasses immediately.
All right, my friends, we are here with Jasper Maxwell. He's a researcher on theory and he's had an NDE and he's come up with some plans that he thinks can help humanity. And we're going to discuss some of that. If we can get to all of it, we will, but I'm not sure we can get to all of it. Welcome to the show, Jasper.
Thank you very much.
So why don't we start with your NDE and then we'll go from there. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah. Can you frame a specific question?
Sure. What happened that caused your NDE, and then what happened during and after?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Before that day when it happened, it was just a very amalgamated amount of stress. I lost a friend that I had for a long time, and I didn't have many people in my life at that time. I still don't, but now I have the people I need. So I also cut contact with a partner of mine who was abusive for like 8 years that same day, and I had like a stressful moment with my partner later that night, and it was really small. It was super innocent, but it was enough to make me feel really bad about myself because I couldn't figure out how to say no, and it was enough to make my just from all the day's stress and all the heaviness of it and the implications. It just kind of made me judge myself to a point where like I have a condition called POTS, POTS. I didn't know that at the time. It's like your vagus nerve and your heart blood pressure kind of work in different rhythms. And for some people, it comes from being post-viral from like COVID. That's why a lot of people know about now. But I got it the old-fashioned way, which is from a life of prolonged exposure to the stress chemical or the stress being a lot of stress for far too long kind of put me there. So it kind of like made my heart race to the point where I couldn't control it. And yeah, it gave me a heart attack. So that wasn't good. But it
Did you end up going to the hospital or?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. I woke up 2 hours later and I was okay. I didn't not well not okay. Okay is not the word. I woke up 2 hours later not really remembering like anything. And a lot of people in that like time where they're like like knocked out, dead or whatever however you want to phrase it, I don't know. They see like God, angels, things like this. And I saw none of that. I got none of that. I got black for 2 hours. And then I woke up 2 hours later, and then my partner, I couldn't remember anything that was going on.
Let me ask you, you said you just got black or darkness or whatever. So you remember that part that it was just
No,
black? Okay, you don't remember anything from.
I actually don't remember much from I don't remember much from the moments prior either.
Okay.
I know that they occurred. I remember that they happened, but in terms of like when I first woke up, I know that now. But when I first woke up, I didn't really remember anything. The only thing I really reacted to was looking at my phone, and then I could identify my partner's name, and I understood what that meant, and I could understand my younger brother's name. And I call those now love anchors. It's the people in your life that kind of like show you love in a way that makes you feel safe. So those are the only two people I could at all recall. That's now I've kind of classified that in my theory work. And I got up. I wasn't sure what to do. I guess I had no thoughts in my head. It was empty for like the first time ever because beforehand it was a lot of cars going by. I guess a lot of people would describe, I guess, their mindset as in this day and age as like a busy highway of like a lot of thoughts kind of racing all the time. That was my thought. That was my thought process before too. But when I woke up, it was just silent. So it was very curious to me. The way I guess I became to understand the moment, leading moments has become a little different over time. I went down the hall, I went to the bathroom, and I just kind of sat there, just looking at my hands, not really understanding what's going on, and not being able to think a thing. And then I had terms kind of pop into my head, like three principal terms, which I now they're kind of how I do everything. It's you're curious discernment, conceptualization, and congruency. which I can define in my theory work at the time, or I can do it now. But anyways, and then it kind of I asked like the light as it was withdrawing from my head because I still felt that. You've spoken to quite a few people who have NDEs. So, in your experience, just about everyone sees that warm, forgiving light, right? In some way.
Well, the vast majority do, yes.
Okay, yeah, that was my experience too. But for me, it was kind of like withdrawing from my own head. And I asked it as I was leaving. In my own head, I didn't know what, like, I had no assumptions for the word God, but I asked it, "Are you God?" as it left. I wasn't like thinking Christian, whatever, whatever. I was just asking, "Is that what you are?" I was looking in the mirror at this point in the bathroom and I had my glasses on. And then I started to realize that space around my peripherals, like where I was seeing with my glasses versus here, like this area around here was clearer. And I was like, so I like very trembly hands like took off my glasses and looked in the mirror. I was like, I can't see. So I threw out my glasses immediately. And then it went away within 2 minutes. So it wasn't like a permanent state, but it was enough to be like, aha, I'm convinced, you know?
So this was you woke up and you felt this light in your head, so to speak.
Kind of. Yeah, it was kind of there, but like drawing back as I was going through things, and as I was going through the day, and I became to understand it a little bit later, as some people when they meet this light, they say like it kind of dissolves who they are as a person, kind of like more like the philosophy, like the Dalai Lamas, the Adidas, like these people who become more about like peaceful mantras and less about ego, less about themselves in any way, shape, or form. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so these kind of people, that's one encounter in my understanding of things, because my experience was more like when I encountered it, it was like I was quite still upset. I guess prior to this, by the way, prior to this experience, I was an anti-theist, like heavy, 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 heavy. I had no respect for anything spiritual. In this day and age, I don't feel that way anymore. So when I met the light, I guess I didn't know what to think.
So have you had any encounters since that with the light?
I've kind of got a bit of a tug and pull with it since. And my understanding of it is that when I encountered it, I kind of got angry instead of like it took the negativity. It took my trauma, it took my because I had CPTSD prior, and it was quite aggressive. And I actually know how to understand through my theory work how to kind of unloop that. Not like simply and easily or nothing, but I understand what kind of creates it. And I could talk about that another time. But when I encounter, sorry, I keep tangent off. Now I see it.
So you were angry. Why were you angry at it? You said it took away your trauma.
Yeah, it took away my trauma, and I guess I don't know, I looked at it and I was dissatisfied, and I don't know if I was dissatisfied with it or if I was dissatisfied with everything else, if I was dissatisfied with the reality that it exists, and even after everything, like there's this force that has this ability to connect with everyone, and nothing better is happening, I guess. And I guess in a way, in my understanding of it, it's quite an angry force. It's quite displeased itself. So in my mind, maybe it was equally dissatisfied,
Hmm,
equally upset with itself or the state of things. And maybe that implies that they're not too different from each other.
hmm. That's interesting. So you felt that it was angry then.
Yeah, like I was dissatisfied and I was also dissatisfied. Like maybe it doesn't have like most this I have a spiritual framework, and it basically says that perhaps the way we unanimously consider something is how it when it's something that's purely theoretical in a sense, like it's purely a manifestation of will and perception, perhaps that's what it takes. That's what it is. And not saying that there isn't a good way to do it, because that implies that we should try to do things in a good way, obviously, because that would imply that it's contingent on us. So
Okay.
we should be considering how we behave and things like that, and how we speak to each other and things like that. But perhaps, yeah, that there's so many perceptions in society right now that worship and things like that are what really powers their nature. So that leads me to believe that it's a possibility I can't dismiss as it's a possibility I'll continue to entertain.
Are you familiar with the concept, the higher self?
Sort of. Go right ahead.
Well, I'm just speculating that perhaps it was reflecting your own anger back to you because the higher self is you. It's just the part of you that's still on the other side, so to speak, or the divine part.
That's the thing is that prior to that moment, I've spoken with like a lot of therapists. I've had a lot of therapists over the years. I'll be honest with you, and I've gone through all my things. But most of the therapists say to me, especially recently, up until that moment, they said, "I don't see any anger in you." They said that to me over and over again. They said, "You don't seem angry at all," and I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "You have a lot of reason to be upset," and I'm like, I don't know how to rationalize that. So I didn't really feel that anger until that moment. It wasn't really until that moment that I felt that.
Yeah, what I meant was is that since you were angry, it was reflecting it right back to you at that moment for some reason. But I'm not saying that's what was happening. I'm just speculating that that's a
Yeah,
possibility.
yeah, me neither. I'm also kind of speculating at the end of the day. I can't. I'm always willing to be wrong. I'm fine with being wrong. I
Yeah.
honestly am.
How did it take you a while to process all of this?
Yeah, like the whole damn year.
Took about a year for you to start making some sense of it.
Well, no, I've been. It's more like it's more like I got like a Rubik's cube and or a Tesseract, I guess, more adequately. And like the keys and an instruction booklet for dummies, and I was like, okay, I get to figure this out now.
Okay. So a little bit at a time then basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did you start coming up with your plans?
Just from my general like, I've had a dissatisfaction with certain things for a very long time, I'd say.
Okay, well, let's back up a second. Did you notice any gifts after this encounter?
Yeah, I noticed some that I in hindsight had before and just didn't listen to sort of. And after that reset, it became very clear that I could understand basically when you say just about anything, if I really analyze the words, I can understand what that word is, and I have the definition of the word. I can understand exactly what your extra associations to those words are. So that's kind of like what trauma and all that classifies as well as like fears, hesitancies. I can see all those kind of things when I talk to people.
You can see their fears and what else?
Like anything that contrasts genuinity, basically.
Ah, okay. Inauthentic.
Disingenuine.
Okay. Any other gifts that you noticed since then?
Sort of short-term predictions. Like, for example, I when people are talking to me, I can see where their thoughts are already going, and I can see where they came from. So at that moment, I can kind of anticipate where the train ends, and I can adjust myself in the moment if I need to. But it's not something I use negatively because I shouldn't. Genuinity is kind of my anchor of how I do everything. I don't lie. I do my best to be perfectly honest.
Well, that's good. I think honesty is a very important principle for people who want to advance spiritually or raise their vibration or whatever you want to call it and want to go to a higher level, so to speak. Okay, so let's get into some of your plans.
Yeah, so I guess it's an easy diet of forgiveness for all is kind of the idea, I guess. Because there's a lot of problems on this planet that we kind of make the wrong example of, I guess. The court systems are pretty harsh in my mind. I don't think people should be afraid to confront their problems. It doesn't matter how far they've gone into them. It doesn't matter what they've done. They should be able to come forward and be able to stop it then and there in the cycle and have whatever they need to prevent it rather than them have to run forever and not have anyone ever like try to take care or intervene. I think at that point we've let things gone too far anyways. This system is kind of reactive. It's not proactive at all. It doesn't really invest into people. It kind of waits for them to fail and then takes money from them.
Yeah, I agree. The court system could use some reforms or revamping in many ways. Now, did these plans, do you think that they are a result of from your NDE?
I guess it's an ability to try to like get the right messages across to people who care about things because I guess when I stopped having as many personal problems, I just cared about everyone else more in a way.
So, do you have ideas on how to implement some of this?
Yeah, well, I guess the trickiest part for me is that I don't want to be doing something that's like forceful on anybody. I'd rather sit down and rationalize with somebody and make sure they understand what's going on and why and the how. So I really need to be in a position where people are willing to talk to me and take me seriously and have time. And the problem is that a lot of people don't have the brain space or the time who have these kind of jobs. because they're so railroaded into having to do such high demand things in general. So it's been hard to find someone who has the time, I guess, or the will to take me seriously, I suppose. But over time, I know what it takes to prove to people what you know, or that you know something. Is that you have to kind of put it on paper for them and show it to them in a specific way. And I get that, but I could do it in other ways, like talking to people. So it's just, anyways, a bit of a frustrating point.
So changing hearts and minds, so to speak, then?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, I was going to say, so the people that you think that have these types of jobs, are you talking about government jobs or?
Yeah, like anyone, like celebrity, anyone who we see prominently, just they make the most choices and they get the least time. They get the least time to like pause and consider, and they get the most criticism for things that they can't really say out loud. Like they can't confirm or deny most of the things they start saying because of their sources and because of the implications of being able to do so. And like it's kind of just a confusing mess because we should be just talking to each other, really. Like we should be throwing stones from afar. We should be sitting down and rationalizing with each other.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the old adage of treat others as you would want to be treated. Yeah, I agree that forgiveness is a huge thing, and forgiveness is mostly for the person forgiving, not for the person being forgiven. I mean, it works for both, but because there's a saying, I believe it's purported to be said by the Buddha that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and hoping the other guy dies. Have you heard that before?
Yes. Yes.
One of my favorite sayings.
Do you remember you're probably familiar with a bunch of different scriptures and things like that. Do you remember what Jesus said specifically about forgiveness? Do you remember what he said on the cross when he was dying? The full quote?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah, that's because people weren't aware enough to make the kind of choices that they're making, kind of. They're not aware enough to really participate and observe what they're even doing.
Yeah,
So he could never he couldn't it really was kind of up to him in a way if he's the one who's the aware one in the room, he has to be the one capable of leading everyone. And if he can't, I guess that's his way of forgiving them and saying to himself he tried.
yeah. One of the greatest example, I guess, in history of forgiving that, and because he's realizing they don't know who they are, they don't remember who they are, they don't understand what they're doing, and so he's willing to forgive them. And we seem to have a hard time doing that, even with just small things.
Yeah, yeah. We just pick I'm right and you're wrong, and then it's like, well, why can't we just disagree for 5 seconds? It's okay, you know. It's okay to not believe the same thing. Like I can suspend a belief just to try to believe something. If it doesn't make sense, then I reject it. It's not painful. I'm at least not for me. I don't know about everyone else, but
Yeah, my wife likes to say, "Can you be okay with the other person having a having their belief and you differing with them?" And that's people have a hard time with that, especially now during the election time with all the political garbage going on. People, I've seen friends and family have a huge rift over this kind of stuff. It's just ridiculous if you ask me.
it is. I'm more of mine with the founding fathers, where to split the party at all is to say that the needs are somehow different in the species. It's to say that we're somehow different from each other and we're not. So we should just sort of, like scientists approach the conversation from trying to understand what is true, not that I am right and you are wrong. It's they mathematically equate it until they can't anymore, and then they look for what they can use to do that with. So they're trying to understand what to do. But these people don't want that. They want to disagree, which is what they
Yeah.
do. They can make choices, is my point.
Well, and a faction of them want to force their belief on everybody else too, if they can, in different ways. So yeah, I'm with the founding fathers also. I'm a history buff too. I've studied that history pretty in depth, probably more than most. So
I'd imagine, yeah, you sound like it, yeah.
yeah, so that's number one. Number one is just start treating each other as you would want to be treated. Have forgiveness. Allow people to be who they are, as long as you're not as long as they're not harming someone or harming you. Leave them be if you disagree.
Well, I also believe we should care about each other to the extent where we don't want them to hurt themselves either.
Right,
That
right.
that's yeah, yeah. Not saying that you don't feel that way. I'm just saying that, like, for me it's kind of odd that we go around thinking about picking and choosing who we care about at all,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day that feels tiring to me. I'd rather say everyone, I care about everyone, and then just leave it at that. That's my philosophy.
Well, we were talking about NDEs for a second there, and the vast majority of them experience this unconditional love like they've never experienced on Earth before. I don't know that you can cultivate that. I had an experience where I experienced that to a certain degree one time, and but I had it for other people, not, I wasn't just feeling it for me. And it was after a series of dreams I had for a couple nights in a row, and I won't get into that right now, but I had this compassion and love for everybody, and all the things that normally would have annoyed me didn't bother me at all. I could see and hear their thoughts and see all the things that they had anxiety over and were worried about, and the vast majority of the things they were worried about didn't matter a bit, really, but to them it was like really super important. It faded after 3 days, and man, I wasn't angry, but I was really disappointed.
Interesting. It faded.
Well, what I think it was is I think it was a glimpse from my higher self on what's possible, that we could have that kind of love and compassion for each other. And I suppose I said I don't know that you can cultivate it, but I think you can cultivate that.
Yes, yes. Think about it this way, the way you radiate outwards starts from how you speak to and treat you. So anyone who's like, for example, the people who are the hardest on the people around them talk to themselves like they're irrelevant almost. Like who they are is irrelevant. They're just go, go, go. So if you learn to treat yourself with patience and kindness and stuff like that, then that will just radiate outwards. But you have to start with you. You have to.
Absolutely. Even people who try to treat others well sometimes don't treat themselves like that. And I've often said that to people. I said, you treat yourself like a loved one, just like you would, if you're in trouble and you need some help, treat yourself like you would treat somebody else that you're trying to help.
Yeah, but I also mean the active narrative. So when you're speaking yourself in your head, when you're reasoning out, when you're talking, when the voice that you control speaks to the voice that you don't really control, make sure the one that you're controlling speaks the other one that's nicely. And when the other one speaks to you rudely, call it out. That's sort of my balance. That other voice can sound like 1,000 people. I'm aware of that. Some people tell me that. I think that's what the subconscious does to people when it stores too much trauma. When it stores too much trauma, it basically, in my understanding, is the subconscious kind of takes the things that you haven't quite figured out yet, takes the puzzles you haven't finished, and the end result, the end production of it is always "I forgive you." It's always "I love you, I forgive you, I understand now." No matter what the problem is, that's hopefully the resolution. That's all that in my mind has always been every time I've approached this. So I haven't found a situation where I have to shoot something yet. So I'm going to keep going with that. But yeah, just maintaining.
Yeah, no. Are you familiar with the Ho'oponopono?
No.
It's a Hawaiian ritual, I guess. And basically, whenever there's a rift between you and a family member or a friend or whoever, the first thing you do is say, I forgive you. Please forgive me. Everything's going to be okay. I think I'm paraphrasing it now, and that's just a ritual that they do to change the dynamics of the whole situation. Because that immediately lets go, sucks the negative air out of the room, so to speak. And you don't have to do it directly to the person either, even if they're not there.
Oh, that's what you that meant. Is that what that I saw one of your thumbnails was about something like that?
Yeah, I have a video. Yeah. Actually, I don't know if I discuss Ho'oponopono in there or not. I might mention it, but yeah, it's how to you can heal a rift without even talking to the person. Basically, keeping somebody, despite how they might be treating you or what they're doing, you see them in their highest potential or their highest light, if you will, and you just do that. And I did that with a family member, and it took a couple of months. I had a kind of a terrible rift, and we got along great before that. That person would not speak to me at all. And so, anyways, I did that for a couple of months, and it was like it never happened. And we hadn't seen each other for a little while, and then when we saw each other, they came and gave me a hug, and it's never ever come up again. And I thought, wow, this really works.
Yeah, yeah. I can that's what I call think of it this way. When you're about to dance with someone and they're right in front of you, if you step forward, they step back, right? So
Yeah,
that's called what I call the dance we do with each other. So we
yeah,
kind of get used to sort of positioning ourselves in different ways when we approach ourselves and we approach each other in different ways. So
yeah,
though that adjustment, what we're used to, is based off of how we've been treated a lot in the time. That's how we tag on associations to our experience, kind of. That's how we say like, oh, this person, this is more than just this event. This event is more than just here and now, which it isn't. It never is. You have total agency in every moment. It's just if you consider all those extra things that the subconscious throws at you, you won't.
Yeah. Well, and you've probably heard, we're all connected in some way or another. So I remember listening to an NDE where the gal, she said she could see people's thoughts and how they attach to other people. So if you're thinking something about someone negative or positive, it attaches to that person and influences them somewhat to act that way. And so,
Yeah. That's the other part of forgiveness, by the way. That's why you forgiving someone does something for them because
yeah,
you kind of let go of that attachment and then like I've met people who've divorced a long time ago from someone they cared about and shit they're still holding on to some stuff sometimes and it's not like
yeah, still holding on to that anger. Yeah.
throughout still holding on to like not just anger at them but anger at themselves, you know, for things I've done wrong. And it's like it's over now. It's okay, you know?
Yeah, I got divorced about 12 years ago after 30 years of marriage. And so at the time I thought it was the end of the world. It was devastating. And I got depressed over it too and so on. And I thought, gee, what am I going to do now? And I even considered, unaliving myself, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. I've been there.
I was never that type before, and that was the first time I really felt like maybe I could. And so I overcame that. And one of the ways I overcame that is I started talking to myself, like you were talking about, and telling myself stuff, even though I didn't believe it at first. It's like, what else am I going to do? So I just kept repeating it, and things started changing.
Would you like to know why that is?
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as I understand. The narrative. So you will kind of you have the ability to sort of convince yourself of anything at the end of the day,
Right.
in a sense of the word. So you can angle something as the worst thing in the world, and then no matter what it is, I've met people, trust me, and they can work themselves into a point where they see no other way out other than. But the thing is that you kind of think of it this way: every thought you have is like a story you're writing yourself. So the more you write it in one way, it's going to become a horror film eventually, right? It's going to become a horror book eventually. So, but if you write it differently, then it becomes more pleasant.
100%. Yeah. I often say that our life is derived from the stories we tell ourselves. And so be sure and tell yourself a good story.
Yes, yes, for sure. Yes, yes, for sure.
All right. From that point, we have forgiveness. What else?
Forgiveness. So that's one thing that needs to be addressed. Well, the reason why I feel like that's kind of like the sweeper for things is because I feel like that's kind of like taking the legs of the thing out, the problem itself. It's because it kind of alleviates a tension point where people, both at the very bottom and very top of things, would rather not have to deal with that. And if we could learn to forgive even those people and those people, then which and I can rationalize that out too. So don't worry about that. Then if we could individually forgive each other and ourselves, then I think things would just we wouldn't be in this race to like hide from each other. We wouldn't be in this race to fight with each other. And that in my mind addresses conflict as the issue is forgiveness. So that addresses and as well as greed in a way because they don't know what they do. That's sort of their problem is that when you're at the very top of the pyramid, you have this degree of separation between you and everything you do. And even though your choice is impacted, even though you have the data in front of you, it's not suffering that you're witnessing. It's not the impacts, it's not the consequences of your actions that are being brought upon you. That's all the way over there. So you never get to experience that, learn how to sympathize with it. It's a lot of people who, unfortunately, in their lives, when they were on the schoolyard and they went pushing people around, no one was big enough to push them down too. Because if they did, they'd be like, oh, and I had that moment as a child. So I was like, oh, I shouldn't push people around. They don't like that. I don't like that either.
Yeah. That's what we call learning our lessons sometimes the hard way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think forgiveness opens the door for everything else, really. I like to, s- I believe that one of the reasons that we're here, if not the main reason we're here, is to learn to love the unlovable, so to speak. And when I say unlovable, that's everything that, society or,
Perceptual.
yeah, or culture, thinks this person is unlovable for, XXX, whatever. And that goes back to what I said earlier. Can you be okay with people having a different opinion? Can you still see them in their highest light if they make a mistake? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I always ask people, even if you disagree with me, can you give me time to prove it to you? And just, can you come back when you're in a better mood? And I'm in a better mood, and we talk about it again. Because it's okay if you handle that conversation badly. I'll forgive you again. You can come back. Because I'm willing. I want you to understand at the end of the day. That is my goal. It is not to be right over you. It is to make sure you understand. And if you have points that are capable of, if you can knock me out of the atmosphere, I'll take it. It's not that you can't. It's not that no one can. It's just that I'm fairly convinced this is the right way to do things from an alphabet of factors. So, but if you can bring something better than that, please go ahead.
Right. Yeah. Well, and a lot of people can't do that, or they're so stuck on their position being right, and then they get heated. And once it gets heated, you might as well end the
You need to
conversation
walk away. You need to walk away.
because
Yeah.
it's now emotional. There's no mental,
Well, that's because that's
exchange.
because their position doesn't bear on what makes sense. It bears on what matters to them, and bears on what something means to them. It's less a rational conclusion, more place you're brought to by feelings, and not that they're irrelevant. It's just what kind of feelings are we having? Are we having jealousy? Are we angry? Are we greedy? Are we like what are we experiencing? That's really matters, and how are we communicating it, and how positive and constructive is it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot going on there, and I used to say that no logic or reason or amount of evidence can change their mind when they're emotionally attached to their position. And then I used to say God himself could come down and show them, nope, you're wrong. And they still still wouldn't change their mind. Um, and we probably all have done that to some degree or another, but some people are just,
I can't admit I've been wrong before. It's happened. I was once a child and I knew nothing, so everything I said was probably
yeah,
vaguely wrong in some way, or I should have been asking more questions than making statements. But that's kind of like my position when I'm in front of someone who I can see understands something a little bit better than me. I'm asking questions. I'm not making denials. I'm not making. That's the other thing, is that if you're gonna come to a conversation, you're gonna make dismissals. You're gonna make denials. You're not really bringing an argument. You're not really discussing the point in a way that shows you're right. You're more or less just saying I'm wrong over and over again, and I don't understand you, and that doesn't move anything forward, and it doesn't give me anything. So I'm disinterested now.
yeah. I find it's good to ask questions or give another say, well, what about this? What if this was the possibility? Instead of saying, no, this is the way it is. And see
Yeah.
if they'll consider it. But if it gets heated and they dig in deeper and deeper, at some point it's better to leave the conversation. What is it? There's a meme that floats around the internet. I think it says it's better to be nice than to be right all the time or something like that. But
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, like pick your battles.
yeah, exactly.
Not every point, not every hill is goddamn worth dying on. So
Most of them are actually.
no, no, definitely not. Life is for living.
Do you have some sort of an idea on how you want to start educating people? Or is it just trying to get to the folks who are in positions of influence?
It's kind of, I mean, they're in charge of education, but education doesn't super aggressively work, as the right points out constantly. Like they're not unfounded, and I'm not saying that they should take money away from it. That's the wrong answer, 100%. But saying it doesn't function when there's one teacher in the room and there's 30 students and half of them are paying attention, I'd say it doesn't function. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Our school model is way outdated, and
Yeah.
that's kind of unusual for somebody my age to say to say that. My contemporaries aren't on this. A lot of them, most of them aren't on the same wavelength as me. So
No, but you could very easily say that they just should give them more money to hire more teachers or make more schools. Anyway, we're an expanding population. We should and a fairly rapidly one. Why aren't we adjusting the belt a little bit as it goes along? I don't know.
well, I'm not sure that more money is the answer to hire, because the money always seems to not get spent where it's supposed to get spent.
That's just shitty
So
leadership. Yeah.
yeah,
That's just people making greedy choices for themselves because they can, because they're not worth the position they're in. Sorry to say it.
we need to fix that first before we start throwing more money at it.
Yes, I would agree with that. I would like to talk to a lot of those people, I'll be honest with you. There's some people on this planet that don't, yeah, that don't deserve what they have in front of them. I'd say. I'm not saying that they can't. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have it. I'm just saying that their behavior and how they handle situations is not adequate for their role and responsibility and burden and power. I'll move on.
So do you feel like your spirituality, your vibration, or anything has improved since since you're NDE and since you've been contemplating these things?
Yeah, yeah. I kind of built like a framework to kind of understand how to believe. Okay, so picture, you know what a Venn, you know Venn diagrams. Okay, so picture a Venn diagram. Picture one side, one religion, the other side, one the other religion. Now picture a bunch more, and that overlay in the middle is what I call genuine overlap, which is my way of saying that that's all that I believe in a way. Like in any way that we're kind and considerate and loving to each other in theology, spirituality, whatever it is, in any way that we're hopeful and willful and forgiving and kind. That's what I believe in.
Okay. So that sounds kind of like to me that take the truth from all of them and leave the rest.
Yeah, discard the rest. The rest isn't needed.
Is
Yeah.
that fair to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also it's the atheist. What the atheists say is fair to suggest that if someone's authoring a book and the first man's God, then everyone else from after him isn't. So their adjustments to the penmanship may be a lucky guess. It could be right. I'm not gonna dismiss that. It could be right, but it would be a lucky guess, kind of compared to a God. It would also be possibly a lie or just misinformed. So it's not like, and that's the same with any book that has more than one pen writing the paper, by the way. So it's not like it's inconsistent unless your brains are actual copies of each other. It's be the way it works.
I've studied quite a few. I came through the Christian religion, but I've studied quite a few of the world religions like Buddhism and the Vedas and the Egyptian texts and so on. And one of the things that they all have in common is they all teach that the kingdom of God, so to speak, is within. And so everybody's out here trying to build it over here or looking for it, looking for it over there, and it's all within you. And so
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept. And so they miss the mark there. And a lot of the things that you hear from the rank and file religion, especially the Christian religion, because I know that one the best, is dogma, and it's not, and they misunderstand the scriptures and what they mean and so on and so forth because they built up this dogma around what they think it means. A lot of people that kind of diss or hate on the Christian religion, they're not really they're hating on the dogma, which is okay because I don't like it either. But
I don't appreciate that either. Yeah, I don't appreciate when I don't know. In my mind, like when you're quoting like Jesus directly, when you're quoting directly out of his mouth, like in those moments you should really be listening. But when you're quoting quotes from like kings and stuff like that, and that just said that they had the influence of God through them, but they don't really. I'm sorry because I know a lot of people are going to take issue with everything I'm saying right now.
no, it's okay.
But if he's not behaving the way God's saying matters, then he's probably wrong. Like
Right.
if he's not behaving worthy, if he's being like a powerful, anyways, otherwise, then he's probably incorrect. That's just my assessment of that.
I think for the most part, the scriptures are a metaphor for the human experience. And so a lot of the things that don't seem to make sense, if you take them literally, can make all kinds of sense when you see the metaphor in it.
For sure, for sure,
And
yes.
so, and that's where I think the mainstream, I call them postmodern traditional Christians, make the mistake of taking everything too literal. So
I'd agree with that. I think some things some people maybe can look for scientific evidence of, but I think it's more looking if God's writing a book, then he's telling a story to educate you or something, right? That's
sure.
how I look at it. Yeah.
One of the things you hear from Christians, oh, it's the word of God, the word of God. I said, the word of God is when God speaks to you directly. It's not written down in some book somewhere. So that might have been the word of God to somebody else, but you can see all the multitude of interpretations. So how do you know? So it's when God or source, I said, but I've long since left the idea that God is an anthropomorphic, you know, old man sitting up on a throne with his computer with a big red smite button over there punishing everybody
I
that
love that. I love visual.
because that's kind of the traditional Christian. It's a little that's a little bit on the extreme to make the point, but
Yeah,
that's
it is. They think because he has power that he would use it to harm us when we're wrong. And I think if you like raise your kids, when you're raising your kids, you learn that they respond better to being reasoned with and treated kindly. So I don't see how the Almighty Being would conclude any differently than how we
yeah,
best receive things. Does that make
yeah.
sense? If he's capable of communicating with us.
Especially, yeah, and especially if he is on a higher level than us, so to speak, how much more? It's like I say, what loving parent would stop loving their child even if they're in prison?
No, if you know infinitesimally more, if you're more aware to treat someone with that kind of disrespect is just punching down. It's not showing them justice. It's not showing them. It doesn't solve the problem either. It's a band-aid solution, if that. So it just eliminates one source, but it doesn't eliminate the problem itself. So
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mentioned it earlier, changing hearts and minds, and the drawback, I guess, is how do you do that on a large scale?
I have a few. Yeah, I guess on a large scale. Like at some point, it's just I just want enough people to take me seriously. That's really I just want enough people. But that takes you got to convince different groups of people with different things because academics want to hear it from one way and spiritual people want to hear it from another. So it really not to say that anyone's wrong or anything, but it's just everyone has their preference, I guess, or their way of understanding things. I think is more accurate. So I'd rather work alongside that than resist it. I said I was doing theory work earlier. One of the things I've done, and this is gonna sound maybe bonkers to some people, but whatever, I don't care, is I kind of took a lot of psychology's concepts and kind of tested their temperament. And a lot of them, from what I said earlier, how you understand how anyone says anything with like the definition of the words, it doesn't make sense to me, a lot of their terms. And modern psychology would kind of agree with me, I believe, because I was speaking with a therapist recently because I just got one because, anyways, it's a funny story. And she was saying that, or he was saying, I can't remember. He was saying that in the DSM-5, they don't even use terms like mental illness. It's not a term that is supposed to pop up everywhere. So, and that's something that we say to ourselves all the time. Also, just as another random point of comparison, people can have cancer, for example, but you never hear someone self-identifying with that fact. You never hear anyone
Yeah.
saying, I am that cancer. You are hearing people say, I am ADD. You'll hear people say, I am bipolar. And that
Ah,
I understand, but it gives people the wrong impression of how things actually work because it's not about diagnoses follow treatment, right? So, and ideally, you do something to treat it, not kind of treating it like it's you is kind of like making it a part of yourself, and that makes it harder to kind of detach and analyze in a way.
yeah, that goes back to the self-talk. Yeah. Whenever we say I am, X, your subconscious doesn't know the difference.
Yeah, it's quite powerful. Like language is powerful to yourself.
It takes you literally. And
Yeah.
so, when your self-talk has to change to the positive side as much as possible. Now, I'm not a what they would call toxic positivity. I think that there's two parts. There's the negative and there's the positive. And when we come to center is where we're closest to source or God, if you will. That's a long story. That's kind of a long story to get into too. Have you ever heard of Dr. John DeMartini?
No, that's an interesting name. Who's this?
He is a Remember that you familiar with the old movie The Secret?
No, I'm very sorry.
No?
Maybe if
With
you explain it to me, I would be, but not in my active memory.
Amanda Burns, um, or Byrnes, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Anyways, basically The Secret was what first came out, and it was a book originally, and then it came out as a movie about how your thoughts manifest things
Oh, yeah.
and how to do it. It's really what kind of started the trend on manifesting, through your thoughts and your beliefs and so on and so forth. It has some good stuff in it, but it was kind of rudimentary. He was in that just in a short clip and stuff. But and so people think, oh, he must be all into that. Oh, you got to be positive 100% of the time. And he's not at all.
No, 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 gosh, no. If you're screaming at me in my face, I'll try to be patient with you, but I will close the door. at the very least. And if you come swinging at me, I am swinging back. It's not
Yeah,
that I'm incapable of self-defense. It's not that I'm not that I can't. Trust me, I can't. It's not that. It's that in general, I'm gonna do my best to make this resolve and understand each other at the very end of this. But if you're gonna test me, I'll pass. It's fine.
yeah, yeah. I've been involved in martial arts since I was 15 years old, so I hate to say it, going on 50 years or so, but so I've been in my share of scrapes, as they say. I never started it though. But anyways, I know
Correct.
how to diffuse a situation because that's one thing they teach you, at least in traditional martial arts when I started, is you never start it. But you're allowed to finish a few of them. Anyways,
Yeah.
I remember a specific incident where I put this to work, and I'll just tell that. So the guy, we were at a gas station. I don't remember, it was too long ago. I don't remember what caused it, but the guy was going off on me, and yelling and hollering and this and that, da da da. And normally I would have, you know, got right back at him. But I said, "Hey man, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I hope it gets better, and I'm sorry you're having such a hard time." And that just melted him, man. He's like, "Hey, you're right, man. I got some stuff going on. I'm sorry." And
I'm not in control right now. My feelings are. I'm not in control of me.
yeah.
My everything else about me right now is it needs a way out somehow.
And and I've done that at other times too, but not always, I'm not perfect at it
But
because
that's a great response. That's really good. Yeah. I mean you can't be better than yourself at the same time, but you can only be so capable in the moment if you're tired and whatever. But
well, usually we
that's
just
really good.
react. We just react, and it's an old program, usually from childhood. You get programmed from up to the age of 7. They say that the child's a child's brain is in the theta state until they're about 7 years old, and that's the meditational state or the dream state when you're sleeping. And so they soak in everything without any filter. And the scriptures teach, train up a child in the way he should go, and he'll never depart from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whatever your environment was before the age of 7, that's what programmed you mostly. I mean, you can get other stuff after that, but now you have a filter because you're more conscious, so, as they say. But those things become memories, and so that's why you see some adult acting like a 3-year-old because they're bringing a 3-year-old, program to an adult situation.
There's ways of becoming self-aware of these things too, though. Like,
Yeah,
for me, like just being able to address the underlying pattern, I guess. Like, to be
yeah,
like, okay, I've seen me do this before. Why'd I do it? And what else could I do? That's something I always try to ask myself because in any moment you could just do differently. It's just and if you were someone else or you had experienced something differently, you would. But it's just not what is instinctual to you. But that can be you still can. It's still an option if you are able to consider it as a better alternative in the moment.
yeah. Well, that's what we call triggers, that they become subconscious, see, and you don't even, a lot of them you don't even remember until you get triggered. But yeah,
Yeah.
you can address them you can change them by addressing them. And in some cases, sometimes a memory will come up, but you don't remember it because it was in the heat of the moment. But if you can be self-aware or mindful and catch that memory of, and it might have been something that happened to you when you were a child, as soon as you realize that, and you realize you might have had a skewed perception of it because you were a child, you didn't understand it at the time, and you can see, you were believing a lie, so to speak.
Yeah, you were taught something wrong. Yeah, you were shown the wrong example.
You didn't know any better, so that turns into a programmed memory.
But those are those are rewired by forgiving yourself for one for like not understanding any better at the time and for two forgiving I say forgive whatever hurt you, I suppose, at the end, like whatever caused the pain.
And
Yeah.
forgive your 5-year-old self for not understanding and blah blah blah.
Yeah, because he's only as equipped as you make him. Not you, but the people who are responsible for him make him.
Yeah,
So that can't be his fault intrinsically. He's only as capable as zero. He's infinitely capable, but that's up to you, sort of, as like a
yeah.
parent to do well. And if you weren't given any of that, then you're not giving them the things you don't know. That's my expression is you can't teach a man to catch a rabbit. He hasn't learned how to catch himself.
That's true. Yeah. you can give him instructions and tips on how to do it, but he still has to actually take the action and do it himself. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're probably gonna be giving the wrong tips because you haven't actually caught it yourself until you're actually the one with it in your hands. You don't actually understand how to
Oh
get it
yeah,
going.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's madness if you're trying to give them tips and instruction and you've never done it yourself.
I've met some bullshitters in my day, I swear to God.
So you could if, as long as you're not framing it as advice, you could say, hey, maybe if you tried this or that, I don't know, I've never tried it before, but you can give them some
Yeah.
ideas. Any other part of this pl of the plan that you haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I have a couple of, I guess, I in this world you kind of got to channel things into business ideas to get people to take them seriously, I suppose. One one of them is I'm taking my psychology thing, conceptology, the thing that's supposed to be. It's basically a framework that's less labely and less about the problem, more about the solution, less about what's difficult. So I'm trying to turn that into a life coaching thing because life coaching things cost very little, and I would be quite good at it with that skill set. The other angle I have for it is maybe I'll do a PI thing. Maybe I'll become a private investigator and I'll just try to talk to people and try to worm my way in myself. I don't know, that'd be fun. But ideally, I get help from other people. I don't want to be doing this all by myself. I forgot to mention that. I'd like help very much, a lot, very much.
You definitely couldn't scale this without having help. I mean, yeah,
No,
you can do it as an individual, but you can only touch so many people. Except here's an idea. You may have thought of this already.
I'm listening.
You can start a YouTube channel, and that's how you can reach, hundreds, thousands, and eventually even millions of people.
Where'd you get that idea from?
Well, and that's
Okay,
that's one of the
well,
reasons I started this channel too, is to try and reach more people with with a lot of information that I believe needs to come into the mainstream consciousness more.
yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I'm considering something. I was thinking of like a podcast or something in that territory. So YouTube works. YouTube's also in that territory. I just need a setup that makes sense, but we'll get that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been playing around with YouTube for years on and off, and I finally got serious about it, and now I wished I had done it sooner. So what I'm doing
Yeah,
now, anyways.
yeah, I get that. I get that. Yeah, yeah. The other reason why I need people's, yeah, it's because I've lived one life and I have one, like any life. Does that make sense? I feel like being in one body at one point, only having lived one life, I can only know some. I think being patient with each other is probably the best approach. But yeah, the other people are also for. I'm pretty sure I want to be translating my words into other languages because my theory work has had a lot of different specific words I've had to develop. And some of the implications is that if other languages kind of develop it, there are some fundamental differences in a way in the way we think when we speak specific languages. And I'm not saying it's like a negative or a positive. I'm just very curious if I know what they are. So exactly down to the term. So I feel like there's some of my concepts that if I translate it over into other languages, it might give me a hint as to what those things are. So I'd be very, very curious. So if I want people from different backgrounds, different mother languages, and specifically 5 underprivileged and 5 overprivileged, because I want that conversation to come down to. We gotta stop being mad at each other for where we were born. I don't know.
Yeah, we're all in this thing together,
Yeah.
like it or not.
Yeah. I was born in nothing. Doesn't mean I should hate someone who's born with far more. I don't feel that. It just comes down to who they are, I guess.
Yeah, it goes both ways. There's a lot of hate the rich too, and yeah, some of them are bad people, but not all of them are, and it's the same thing, if you're rich and you despise the poor, well, that's arrogance or and stupidity, if you ask me. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can understand that. I can understand that. It's it's
most
it's it. It depends on the rationale, but yes, I understand what you're
yeah,
saying.
most of us are somewhere in the middle.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say that most people are. I don't think it's fair to hate either side. I just don't think the situation should exist. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, can we just be net neutral? Can we just upheave it in some way? Can we shake hands and make it over? Is this how it works? The bottom shakes the top. We're good. It's like snakes and
Yeah.
ladders or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And agree to disagree. That's. It's not that hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you read, I just thought of this, it's kind of a little bit off of what we're talking about at the moment, but since you were talking about you studied psychology, have you read Carl Jung?
Yes, I love Carl Jung. Yes,
Yeah.
Carl Jung has some very interesting perspectives about the nature of things because he makes a few suggestions. Sorry, do you want to say something about him? Go ahead.
No, no.
Okay.
I was just gonna say the same thing as you. Yeah, I love him too. I think he really was ahead of his time.
He was, yeah, he was, yeah, and some of his philosophical musings I find quite interesting because he says things like it requires like in order for things to be balanced, it requires kind of God to forgive Satan in a way, and kind of vice versa. That's kind of some of his mantras. That's like in order for us to be stabilized, like the roots of the tree must reach hell and heaven.
Yeah,
I'm like, ah,
yeah. There's
interesting.
that positive and negative, you see.
Yeah,
So that's the thing. A lot of Christians don't even know that the Christian scriptures say that God created all. He created good and evil. Like, oh, really?
I don't know about that. I have a different suspicion of that. I feel like evil's older than good, if I really want to be like technical, just from the way things look. So
Yeah.
good feels like
Well,
a young thing.
I personally don't think any of it was created. It just is.
That's fair
And
enough.
and it's two ends of the spectrum. I use so I hope my audience doesn't get tired of this, but I use the analogy of a battery. You have a positive pole and a negative pole. And in order to get any work done, you have to have both. You have to have the positive and the negative hooked up, and then the circuit running between the two. That's where all the magic happens. You disconnect one or the other pole, and you have nothing. You have a useless battery.
That's interesting. So part of the underlining look into some of my theory work, one of them is about the nature of belief and stuff, and a lot of old world theology has an interplay, except for the very first set of them, which is important, largely to have an interplay between chaos and order, as if they're one's good and the other's bad, as if one disturbs the other in a way that makes things bad. But in the first perception of things, when you look at like indigenous peoples' beliefs, see this it as the same thing. They see it as like Nanabozo, for example, from the I don't know if I'm saying that right, from the indigenous and from the Algonquin and Cree people in North America. Uh, is he will teach with both. He's kind of a trickster at the same time, but he will teach with both chaos and order. He uses chaos to bring about new order in a way. So they go hand in hand. So what's interesting about monotheism is that they put them against each other. And it's not just monotheism, by the way. Norse gods, a lot of people,
Right.
the polytheisms do that too. But this first set doesn't really. This first set sees it as a little more balanced, not across the board, but in general.
The Norse gods are all at war with each other.
Yeah, yeah, they're as good as us. I like to say they're really as good as us.
So, yeah, yeah, it's pretty interesting, but it's dark versus light too. You got to have both. You wouldn't be able to see anything, looking out your window without both. You got to have the contrast from the darkness to the light, and the shadows and so on and so forth to get any depth perception. And
I
that's it.
understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. No, I fundamentally do. I get it, but it's like I listen. I come from bullshit, so I don't like me personally. When I hear that Jesus was a very forgiving man and he came from like gifts the moment he popped out, I'm like that doesn't adequately math up because you're only really taught forgiveness in the face of certain things. In the face, in my at least my understanding, like that kind of extreme of a concept comes down. It's like a diamond. It has to be really pressurized to make anything, right? So if you're going to
Yeah.
come up with forgiving everyone, it's because you've understood something fairly difficult to understand through some very difficult experiences. And suffering isn't without its value ever. It isn't. It just comes from the lesson at the end of it, really, not from hurting yourself along the way.
Right. Well, I try to keep the attitude that all things work for good and all things, and all challenges are opportunities and so on. And it's taken me a lifetime to come to that. But when I look back on my life, like my divorce, for instance, was at the time I thought it was the end of the world and one of the most devastating things that happened to me. Now I look back at it as one of the best things that ever happened to me because I grew so much from that, probably more or comparable to all in my whole life.
You were together for 30 years, you said, yeah?
Yeah, I was married for 30 years. Yeah.
Did you have kids?
Yep, I have three kids. Uh-huh. And now I have
Yeah.
grandkids. I'm 65.
65. How
So
old were you when you had them?
when I had the kids,
Yeah, the kids, yeah.
so let's see, I think I was 26 when we had our first kid.
So what one of my theories here suggests, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off here,
No, go ahead.
is that when you first have kids, it kind of like people have kids at 16 and they don't really become not like that until their kids move out. They don't really grow and mature until they get a chance to second breathe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like I feel like a lot of relationships work that way. I'm not sure the depth of it, but I can understand when you're saying that like when you leave that dynamic that kind of like locks you into who you were, you're like, I feel freed from it. I can be whatever I want. I feel, yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Well, I was on a spiritual path before that, and I think that's part of what led to the breakup. We weren't on the same page. But as I look back, I was progressing very slowly, and that's when I was more active in the Christian religion too, at probably around 35 to about maybe 40 to 45 or so, approximately. But I was
And
kind
until
of
you're about that age, you mean? Yeah, okay, okay.
Yeah, and then I was kind of on my way out of religion slowly. I remember getting in trouble in Sunday school one time for saying that Jesus was a lot like other kids until he, got older. And what? No, are you kidding? Yeah, he was like you said, they were mouthing the dogma that he popped out of the womb with, all the gifts that he had throughout his whole life. And so,
Even if that is the case, even if he like it doesn't mean he's like under the impression he's better than everyone.
right.
You know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
he might have been ahead of most kids in some ways, but I'm sure he still had to go through,
Learning and understanding.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
brain, it's an etch a sketch when you start life. It gets shaken. So you need a
So
second to
I
figure it
don't
out.
I don't know if you believe in past lives or not, but do you believe in reincarnation, past lives? Not sure.
I'm not entirely sure. I would the narrative in my head's quite go ahead. Explain it if you wish.
Okay. I was going to say I believe Jesus had past lives, and I believe we all have past lives. You retain even though your memory is wiped when you come into a new life, so you can kind of have a new fresh start, you still retain the lessons that you learned from all your past lives. So, for example, I have friends who had trouble with drugs or alcohol or what have you, and some of them overcame it, some of them didn't. I partied with them, when I was younger, did a lot of the same things that they did, but I never had that propensity to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. And I could see some of them, they just could not put it down. And I think for me to not have that propensity to do that was because I overcame it in previous lives. Okay. And they haven't yet. And so it may take a couple of lives to go through that and then overcome it. That's just one example. That could happen, with any numerous things. That's why a kid can be born 3 years old and play Bach and Beethoven by the time he's 3 years old, he's playing Bach and Beethoven on the piano. Where did that come from? You know?
Like an inherited value. So I often view our own parents as like a springboard we kind of jump off of. But like if you're watching as do you have siblings?
Yes, I have a brother and a sister.
Are they older than you?
Yeah. hmm
Yeah, so as a kid, you got to like see like, okay, that one fucked up when you tried that. That one fucked up when you tried that. So I'm gonna do that, and sometimes it's even successful. You're like, oh, look at that process of elimination. That like, and eventually your parents should become that for you, where it's like, at least in my mind, and not that it has to be. I'm not trying to pressure anyone into being better than their parents or whatever. But I'm just saying that if you understand what they understand, then
Yeah, that's a given, just because you may have learned things in past life doesn't mean you're not learning and being influenced by your parents and your siblings and and
I
anybody
see what you're
else.
saying. I
Yeah.
do understand what you're saying. It's because I sometimes get I call them organic prompts, kind of where it's not from my narrative and it's not from my needs. It's not like my stomach telling me I'm hungry and I need to eat. It's the answer to a question sometimes that's not part of that initial narrative, which is usually how I get the answers to my questions is by considering them. So I'm like, how did I how did that occur to me? Where did that occur to me from? So that moment, I can kind of see that could be an origin point. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I know from my own children that when they're born, they're people and sometimes science tend to think, oh, they're a blank slate. That's not true at all. They all had their own personalities as soon as they could express it, and they didn't learn that from us because if they were just blank slates. Their personality would be like me and their mother, either one or the other, or a combination of the two. And yeah, they do pick up some traits from us, but
They don't have to. That's the thing.
they
Yeah.
each have their own personality, before that. So
Yeah, they're little
so they
sponges, children. They're little perceptual sponges. They're
yeah, they are.
amazing little
Yeah.
creatures. I love them.
Is there any positive message that you would like to leave the audience?
Yeah, remember to be patient with yourself. It's okay if it takes time to do something, and try to if you're having trouble treating someone else kindly, treat yourself kindly first.
That's a great message. Yeah.
Thank
It's been a pleasure having you on, Jasper, and appreciate you taking the time out. And it's
you.
been a
Yeah,
fun conversation. Yeah, yeah.
I really, really appreciate this. Thank you times a million.
It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you.